war that consumed the galaxy. There is a moment before the fall of every civilization when the universe becomes silent, not because peace has arrived, but because there is no one left alive to fight. The stars themselves seemed colder now. Entire planets burned in the darkness of space, while massive fleets drifted like graveyards among the ruins of destroyed worlds. Civilizations that once ruled entire systems had vanished without leaving behind a single signal. And the worst part, nobody remembered how the war had truly begun. For decades, humanity lived with only one certainty: the Ethel were the enemy. Children across the galaxy grew up hearing terrifying stories about them. Stories told in military academies, broadcast across colonies, and repeated by traumatized survivors. The Ethel were not seen as ordinary aliens. They were monsters, creatures capable of seeing the future, creatures that could predict attacks before they happened. Some even believed they could manipulate time itself. And because of that fear, the galaxy descended into chaos. Humanity had expanded rapidly through the stars during the Age of Expansion. In less than 2 centuries, humans colonized dozens of worlds. Gigantic cities rose across distant planets, and trade routes connected entire systems. For the first time in history, humanity believed it had conquered the universe. Then the disappearances began. Ships vanished near the outer sectors. Military stations suddenly went silent. Entire planets became empty overnight. No bodies, no wreckage, no survivors, only silence. And every time it happened, strange symbols were found in the abandoned ruins. Ethel symbols. Fear spread faster than the war itself. Governments panicked. Entire systems militarized within months, while scientists desperately searched for answers about the mysterious alien race. But almost nobody had ever seen an Ethel and survived long enough to describe them. They appeared without warning, destroyed specific targets, then vanished back into deep space. That was how the war began, or at least, that was the version humanity believed. Years passed, then decades. The conflict slowly consumed the galaxy. Human fleets grew larger. Weapons became more devastating. Entire moons were shattered during battles. Planets were transformed into lifeless wastelands. Space itself became a cemetery filled with wreckage and frozen corpses, drifting endlessly through the void. But over time, something strange became impossible to ignore. The Ethel never conquered worlds. They never occupied territories. They never enslaved civilizations. They simply appeared, destroyed very specific places, and disappeared again, as if they were trying to stop something. But nobody questioned anything anymore. Hatred had already poisoned the galaxy. Millions demanded revenge. Entire families had been destroyed. Humanity needed someone to blame, and every tragedy pointed toward the Ethel. Then came Commander Elias Kane, one of the deadliest soldiers in Earth Fleet, a man completely shaped by war. His wife died during the destruction of Orion 7. His younger brother vanished near Forbidden Ethel territory after sending one final message: "They are not what we think." After that day, Elias stopped believing in hope, stopped believing in peace. The only thing left inside him was hatred. Cold, silent, endless hatred. He became a legend among soldiers, a commander who survived impossible battles, a man the war itself could not kill. But what Elias still didn't know was that the war between humans and the Ethel was only the beginning, because somewhere beyond the known regions of the galaxy, something ancient was waiting, something older than empires, older than civilizations, older than time itself, watching silently from the darkness. And when it finally emerged, humanity and the Ethel would realize, far too late, that they had never been the true enemies at all. Some men become legends because of their courage, others because of their cruelty. But Elias Kane became a legend because he survived. In a galaxy where millions of soldiers died every single day, survival itself had become something almost impossible. Entire fleets vanished during battles before they even had time to fight back. Experienced captains disappeared in seconds. Planetary defenses collapsed overnight. But somehow, Elias always came back alive. Wounded, exhausted, broken, yet alive. That was why soldiers across Earth Fleet started calling him the Iron Ghost. They said death itself could no longer find him. At that moment, Elias stood silently inside the command bridge of the Valkyrion, one of the last remaining warships defending the planet Noxus. Beyond the massive observation window, space burned with endless destruction. Explosions illuminated the darkness like dying stars. Human cruisers drifted through the void in flames, while enemy vessels tore through the battlefield. Fragments of destroyed ships floated everywhere around the planet like a graveyard orbiting the world. Another battle, another massacre, another list of names soon forgotten by the galaxy. Red emergency lights flashed constantly across the bridge. Shields down to 34%, Commander, one of the officers shouted. Elias didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the battlefield outside. After years of war, alarms no longer meant anything to him. Neither did fear. Perhaps that was the war's cruelest effect. It didn't just destroy planets. It destroyed people from the inside. Slowly, silently, Elias took a deep breath. The reflection staring back at him in the glass looked nothing like the man he once used to be. His military uniform hid scars, covering most of his body. His dark hair had begun turning gray long before its time, and his eyes carried a kind of exhaustion no amount of sleep could ever erase. Years ago, Elias had been different. Before the war consumed everything, before the losses, before the hatred, he still remembered the last time he saw his wife alive. Orion. 7 had been under attack that day. Sirens echoed through the streets, while thousands of civilians desperately tried to escape the bombardment. Elias was far away, fighting on another frontier. Too far to return, too far to save her. When he finally arrived back on Orion 7, there was nothing left. No survivors, no bodies, no voices, only ruins, and strange ethereal symbols burned into the destroyed walls of the city. Something inside Elias died that day. After that, he gave himself completely to the war. He stopped living, stopped feeling. The only thing left inside him was hatred. Cold hatred, silent hatred, hatred that grew stronger with every battle. Then came the disappearance of his younger brother, Marcus Kane. Marcus vanished during a classified mission near the forbidden outer sectors of Ethel territory. The last transmission ever received from his ship contained only static and one final sentence. They are not what we think. Then the signal disappeared forever. Elias spent years trying to uncover what happened to him, but military records were erased. The mission was classified, and nobody in command would speak about Marcus ever again. That destroyed the last piece of humanity Elias still had left. Now, years later, he had become exactly what the war needed him to be. A weapon. Inside the Valkyrion's bridge, officers waited silently for his orders. Every soldier respected Elias Kane, but they also feared him, because the commander never hesitated, never showed emotion, never retreated, even when survival seemed impossible. Suddenly, another violent explosion shook the ship. The bridge lights flickered for several seconds. Enemy fleet advancing through the eastern sector, a soldier yelled. Massive holographic displays illuminated the room, showing hundreds of ships fighting above Noxus. The battlefield was collapsing. Chaos spread everywhere. Yet Elias remained perfectly still, cold, focused, calculating every movement. Then something strange appeared on the main radar. A small, unidentified signal drifted slowly through the middle of the battlefield. No identification, no weapons, no military signature. One of the radar operators frowned in confusion. "Commander, we have an unknown object approaching the Valkyrion." For the first time in several minutes, Elias looked away from the battle outside, and for reasons he couldn't explain, a strange feeling moved through his chest, as if that small object was about to change everything forever. In the middle of chaos, something impossible appeared. While hundreds of ships burned above the planet Noxus, a small object drifted silently through the battlefield. It did not dodge explosions. It did not attempt to escape the crossfire. It simply moved forward slowly, directly through the destruction, as if it already knew where it needed to go. Inside the Valkyrion's command bridge, radar operators exchanged confused looks. "Identify that signal immediately," Elias ordered. The holographic displays shifted rapidly. A zoomed image of the object appeared on the main screen. It was a capsule, small, ancient, almost destroyed, but something about it felt wrong. There were no visible weapons, no military markings, no active engines, no energy signature matching any known civilization. It made no sense. Unknown origin, one of the officers muttered while analyzing the data. It doesn't belong to any registered fleet. Another violent explosion shook the Valkyrion. Red emergency lights flashed across the bridge. But now nobody was paying attention to the battle anymore, because the capsule kept moving directly toward them, without hesitation, without fear, almost as if it were searching for Elias himself. The commander narrowed his eyes. It could be a trap. Should we destroy it? One of the soldiers asked immediately. Elias remained silent for several seconds. Something deep inside him said this was different, too strange to be an ordinary enemy weapon. Finally, he spoke. No. The officers looked at him in surprise. Bring it into the main hangar. Commander, that's extremely dangerous. I know. Outside the ship, massive mechanical arms slowly extended into space as the capsule drifted through the burning battlefield. Around it, the war continued. Ships exploded. Bodies vanished into the void. Laser fire cut through darkness like red lightning. But somehow, the capsule remained untouched, as if the chaos itself was opening a path for it. Minutes later, the Valkyrion's main hangar was placed under full lockdown. Dozens of armed soldiers surrounded the landing area. Snipers positioned themselves above the steel platforms. Combat drones aimed heavy weapons directly at the damaged capsule resting in the center of the hangar floor. The atmosphere felt suffocating. Nobody knew what to expect. An explosive device? An alien assassin? Some kind of biological weapon? Elias entered the hangar accompanied by elite officers. His heavy footsteps echoed through the metallic chamber, while smoke and sparks escaped from the damaged capsule. It looked old, very old, as if it had been drifting through space for years, maybe decades. One of the soldiers swallowed nervously. Commander, we're detecting life signs inside. Immediately, every weapon was raised. The tension became unbearable. Then the capsule slowly began to open. Metal groaned loudly through the hangar. The interior lights flickered weakly, and for several seconds, nobody breathed, until finally they saw what was inside. A child, a small girl curled up inside the capsule. She looked frightened, weak. Strange glowing marks pulsed faintly beneath her skin, but it was her eyes that froze the blood inside every soldier. Silver eyes, completely silver. A deadly silence consumed the hangar. Then one soldier slowly stepped backward in horror. No, that's impossible. Another raised his weapon with trembling hands. She's Ethel. Instantly, the entire hangar exploded into panic. Weapons locked into firing position. Soldiers shouted orders. Several instinctively backed away, because everyone knew the stories. The Ethel were feared throughout the galaxy. Creatures capable of manipulating time itself. Monsters responsible for the destruction of entire worlds. And now, a child from that race stood inside the most important warship in Earth Fleet. Alone, the girl slowly lifted her head. She looked lost, confused, almost human. Then her eyes met Elias, and at that exact moment, something strange happened. The commander felt a cold chill run through his entire body, as if the child recognized him, as if she had known him for a very long time. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, weak, almost desperate. You need to run. The soldiers froze. Elias slowly stepped closer. Run from who? The girl began trembling violently. Tears slowly rolled down her face, and when she answered, her voice carried pure terror. They found you. In the middle of chaos, something impossible appeared. While hundreds of ships burned above the planet Noxus, a small object drifted silently through the battlefield. It did not dodge explosions. It did not attempt to escape the crossfire. It simply moved forward slowly, directly through the destruction, as if it already knew where it needed to go. Inside the Valkyrion's command bridge, radar operators exchanged confused looks. Identify that signal immediately, Elias ordered. The holographic displays shifted rapidly. A zoomed image of the object appeared on the main screen. It was a capsule, small, ancient, almost destroyed, but something about it felt wrong. There were no visible weapons, no military markings, no active engines, no energy signature matching any known civilization. It made no sense. Unknown origin, one of the officers muttered while analyzing the data. It doesn't belong to any registered fleet. Another violent explosion shook the Valkyrion. Red emergency lights flashed across the bridge, but now nobody was paying attention to the battle anymore, because the capsule kept moving directly toward them, without hesitation, without fear, almost as if it were searching for Elias himself. The commander narrowed his eyes. It could be a trap. Should we destroy it? One of the soldiers asked immediately. Elias remained silent for several seconds. Something deep inside him said this was different, too strange to be an ordinary enemy weapon. Finally, he spoke. No. The officers looked at him in surprise. Bring it into the main hangar. Commander, that's extremely dangerous. I know. Outside the ship, massive mechanical arms slowly extended into space as the capsule drifted through the burning battlefield. Around it, the war continued. Ships exploded. Bodies vanished into the void. Laser fire cut through darkness like red lightning. But somehow, the capsule remained untouched, as if the chaos itself was opening a path for it. Minutes later, the Valkyrion's main hangar was placed under full lockdown. Dozens of armed soldiers surrounded the landing area. Snipers positioned themselves above the steel platforms. Combat drones aimed heavy weapons directly at the damaged capsule resting in the center of the hangar floor. The atmosphere felt suffocating. Nobody knew what to expect. An explosive device? An alien assassin? Some kind of biological weapon? Elias entered the hangar accompanied by elite officers. His heavy footsteps echoed through the metallic chamber, while smoke and sparks escaped from the damaged capsule. It looked old, very old, as if it had been drifting through space for years, maybe decades. One of the soldiers swallowed nervously. Commander, we're detecting life signs inside. Immediately, every weapon was raised. The tension became unbearable. Then the capsule slowly began to open. Metal groaned loudly through the hangar. The interior lights flickered weakly, and for several seconds, nobody breathed, until finally they saw what was inside. A child, a small girl curled up inside the capsule. She looked frightened, weak. Strange glowing marks pulsed faintly beneath her skin, but it was her eyes that froze the blood inside every soldier. Silver eyes, completely silver. A deadly silence consumed the hangar. Then one soldier slowly stepped backward in horror. No, that's impossible. Another raised his weapon with trembling hands. She's Ethel. Instantly, the entire hangar exploded into panic. Weapons locked into firing position. Soldiers shouted orders. Several instinctively backed away, because everyone knew the stories. The Ethel were feared throughout the galaxy. Creatures capable of manipulating time itself. Monsters responsible for the destruction of entire worlds. And now, a child from that race stood inside the most important warship in Earth Fleet. Alone, the girl slowly lifted her head. She looked lost, confused, almost human. Then her eyes met Elias, and at that exact moment, something strange happened. The commander felt a cold chill run through his entire body, as if the child recognized him, as if she had known him for a very long time. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, weak, almost desperate. You need to run. The soldiers froze. Elias slowly stepped closer. Run from who? The girl began trembling violently. Tears slowly rolled down her face, and when she answered, her voice carried pure terror. They found you. The space surrounding the human fleet changed. It was not just the appearance of the new ships. It felt as if the universe itself had become wrong. Inside the Valkyrion's command bridge, holograms suddenly began flickering violently. Radar systems filled with static. Metallic noises echoed through the corridors, while entire systems started shutting down one after another. Operators desperately tried to understand what was happening, but nobody could explain it, because those ships simply should not have existed. Confirmed ship count. Elias asked while moving quickly through the bridge. The officer's voice trembled through the communication channel. Still counting, but there are hundreds. Origin. Silence. Several seconds passed before she answered. Unknown. Elias frowned immediately. That was impossible. Humanity possessed records of nearly every known civilization in the galaxy. Even unidentified species always left recognizable energy signatures. But these ships matched nothing. When Elias reached the main command deck, He found every soldier frozen in front of the giant observation screens. Then he saw them, and for the first time in years, even Elias Kane felt fear. Enormous black structures floated silently in deep space. Gigantic, far larger than any human warship ever built. Their surfaces seemed to absorb the light around them, making their true shapes difficult to understand. There were no visible weapons, no windows, no engines. It was like staring at creatures made entirely of darkness. And the worst part, they were completely motionless, simply watching. Silence consumed the bridge. Even the most experienced veterans seemed unable to speak, because something about those ships felt deeply unnatural. Something ancient, something terrifying. One of the soldiers whispered almost unconsciously, "It feels like they're alive." Nobody answered, because every person on that bridge felt exactly the same thing. Then the systems began to die. First the radar, then the shields, then the weapons. One by one, every defensive system aboard the Valkyrion shut down completely. The bridge lights flickered violently. "Total shield failure," one operator screamed. "Engines are collapsing. We're losing external communications." Chaos erupted instantly. Soldiers rushed desperately across the bridge, trying to restart systems, while deafening alarms echoed through the entire ship. But nothing worked. It was as if an invisible force was shutting down the technology of the entire fleet. Outside, human warships began drifting helplessly through space. No power, no movement, completely vulnerable. Then one of the massive black ships finally moved. Slowly, silently, without activating engines. It simply glided through space toward the human fleet, and as it approached, the stars around it began disappearing, as if reality itself were being consumed. A primal fear spread across the crew. Not ordinary fear, not fear of death. Something worse, something no human being was meant to feel, as if every instinct inside them screamed that those creatures did not belong in the universe. Elias realized immediately that this was not a normal invasion. This was something far larger, far older. Then suddenly, every screen aboard the Valkyrion activated at once. A transmission, but it wasn't a normal communication. There was no image, no voice, only a deep, distorted sound that felt painful just to hear. Several soldiers collapsed to their knees, covering their ears. Others began bleeding from the nose. Then the sound stopped, and a single sentence appeared across every monitor on the ship. "Timeline located." The silence afterward felt even worse. Elias felt his heartbeat quicken, because in that moment he understood something terrifying. Those creatures were not searching for planets, or territory, or resources. They were searching for people. Behind him, the little Ethel girl stared at the screens in absolute terror. Tears slowly rolled down her face. Then she whispered the words that froze the blood inside every soul aboard the Valkyrion. They came to erase this reality. The silence after those words felt unbearable. They came to erase this reality. No one aboard the Valkyrion knew how to respond. The sentence echoed through the bridge like a death sentence. Elias slowly turned back toward the massive black ships outside the observation window. The longer he stared at them, the stronger the strange feeling inside his chest became. It was instinct, pure survival instinct. Every part of his mind screamed the same thing: run, because whatever those creatures were, they were not something humanity could fight. Then the first human ship disappeared. No explosion, no warning, no wreckage. 1 second, the cruiser was there beside the fleet. The next, nothing, gone, as if it had never existed at all. The soldiers froze in horror. One of the officers stared at the empty space on the radar with trembling hands. What would happen to them? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. Then another ship vanished, and another, and another. Entire vessels erased silently from reality itself. Panic spread immediately across the bridge. "We need to get out of here. Engines are still offline. We can't restore navigation systems." Soldiers shouted desperately, while operators struggled to regain control of the Valkyrion. But Elias barely heard them anymore. His eyes remained locked on the Ethel girl. She seemed to sense every disappearance before it happened, every distortion, every movement, every second. Then Elias noticed something worse. The girl herself was getting weaker. Her body trembled violently now. Thin, glowing cracks slowly appeared beneath her skin, pulsing like fractures made of light. Elias stepped closer immediately. "What's happening to you?" The girl slowly raised her silver eyes toward him. For the first time, Elias saw genuine terror inside them. They're entering this timeline. Before Elias could ask what that meant, everything stopped. Literally, the alarms went silent. The flashing lights froze. Smoke stopped moving in the air. Every soldier aboard the bridge became completely motionless. Time itself had frozen. Elias's eyes widened instantly. His heart pounded violently in his chest. Slowly, he looked around the bridge. One soldier remained frozen in the middle of a scream. Another was suspended in the air while falling to the floor. Outside the Valkyrion, massive explosions hung motionless in space like photographs. The universe itself had become still, except for two people, him and the girl. Elias slowly stepped backward. "What did you do?" The child struggled to breathe. It looked as though remaining conscious required all her strength. "I didn't do this." Her voice sounded weak, broken. "They're tearing the temple flow apart." Elias tried to understand her words, but his mind could barely process what was happening. Nothing about this was possible. Nothing about this was real. Then suddenly, the girl grabbed his hand. The moment she touched him, the visions began. Thousands of them. Entire galaxies burning. Civilizations collapsing into darkness. Planets breaking apart beneath black skies. Humans running in terror while reality itself shattered around them. And everywhere, the same black ships, always present, always advancing, like predators hunting through time itself. Elias collapsed to his knees, struggling to breathe. The visions felt horrifyingly real. He could hear the screams, feel the heat of exploding worlds, feel billions of lives disappearing into nothingness. Then he saw something even worse. Earth, destroyed. Its oceans gone. Its cities reduced to ruins. Its skies covered in endless darkness. No life, no movement, only silence. And standing in the middle of those ruins was Elias himself, alone, watching the end of everything. The visions suddenly vanished. Elias gasped violently as reality returned around him. Sweat covered his face. His heartbeat felt uncontrollable. The girl could barely remain standing now. "I tried to stop it," she whispered weakly, but it already started. Then slowly, time began moving again. The alarms returned. The soldiers continued moving without realizing they had ever been frozen. The battle outside resumed instantly. Explosions continued. Ships burned, as if nothing had happened at all. But Elias knew the truth. It had been real, and for the first time in many years, Commander Elias Kane felt true fear. Fear changed everything aboard the Valkyrion. Until that moment, the crew believed they were facing just another battle in a war that had already consumed half the galaxy. Another impossible mission. Another desperate fight for survival. But now, nobody aboard the ship understood reality anymore. Elias still struggled to breathe after the visions the girl had shown him. His heart pounded violently, while fragments of those horrifying images continued flashing through his mind. Burning planets, collapsing galaxies, Earth reduced to ruins, and always, those black ships, waiting in the darkness. The bridge remained in complete chaos. Officers shouted desperately while trying to restore damaged systems. Outside the Valkyrion, human warships continued disappearing one by one into nothingness. No explosions, no debris, no trace they had ever existed. It was worse than death. Much worse. The Ethel girl remained kneeling beside the command console. Her condition was clearly worsening now. The glowing cracks beneath her skin pulsed brighter with every passing second, as though something inside her was slowly breaking apart. Yet despite her fear, she still looked at the black ships with far more terror than any human on the bridge. Elias noticed immediately. She wasn't afraid of the war. She was afraid of them. Slowly, the commander approached her. "What are those things?" The girl remained silent for several seconds, as if even remembering their name caused pain. Then finally, she whispered, "The Time Devourers." Silence immediately consumed the bridge again. Even the panicked soldiers stopped moving. because those words carried something ancient inside them. Something wrong. Elias kept his eyes fixed on her. What do they want? The girl slowly raised her silver eyes, and for the first time, real tears rolled down her face. They don't conquer worlds. They don't build empires. They don't enslave civilizations. She took a slow breath. They erase entire realities. The words spread through the bridge like ice. One of the officers laughed nervously. That's impossible. The girl slowly turned toward him. You already watched them do it. The officer instantly fell silent. Because she was right. Everyone had seen the ships disappear. Everyone had watched time stop. There was no denying it anymore. Elias tried to remain calm. What are they? The girl looked exhausted now. Weak. But she forced herself to continue. They existed before the first civilizations were born. Before empires. Before war itself. The soldiers listened in complete silence. The devourers moved through timelines, searching for species that may threaten them in the future. And when they find one, she looked toward the screens, showing disappearing human ships. They erase it before it can evolve. Elias felt cold terror spread through his body. You're saying they destroy entire civilizations before they become dangerous? The girl nodded slowly. They do not fight enemies. They prevent enemies from ever existing. Those words shattered everything Elias believed about the universe, because it meant one terrifying truth. Humanity had never stood a chance. The war against the Ethel, the deaths, the destruction, none of it mattered compared to what was happening now. Then Elias asked the question nobody else dared to ask. What does this have to do with the Ethel? The girl closed her eyes briefly, as if the truth itself was too heavy to carry. Then she answered, my people never started the war because we hated humans. She opened her eyes again. We were trying to prepare you. Immediately, angry voices exploded across the bridge. That's a lie. You destroyed human colonies. You murdered millions. For the first time, the girl shouted back, to save the future. Silence instantly returned. Her voice trembled with pain. Every attack, every battle, every world we destroyed. She struggled to breathe. They were desperate attempts to change the future. Elias felt his entire world beginning to collapse. Suddenly, everything made sense. The Ethel never conquered territory, never ruled planets, never sought political power. They only attacked specific places, specific events, specific people, as if they were trying to stop something invisible. The girl slowly looked directly at Elias. In every timeline where humans and Ethel remain divided, she pointed toward the black ships outside. The devourers win. At that moment, Elias understood something horrifying. The entire galaxy had been manipulated by fear. While humans and Ethel destroyed each other, the real monsters waited silently beyond time itself, watching, preparing, waiting for the perfect moment to erase everything. For his entire life, Elias Kane believed he understood who the enemy was. The Ethel were monsters. That was the truth humanity repeated across every colony, every military base, every surviving world in the galaxy. Their faces appeared on propaganda screens. Children were raised hearing stories about Ethel attacks. Soldiers entered battle already filled with hatred before ever seeing one in person. The war had poisoned humanity for generations, and nobody carried that hatred more deeply than Elias himself. Every scar on his body reminded him of what the war had taken away. His wife, his brother, his old life, everything. But now, everything he believed was beginning to collapse. The Valkyrion's bridge remained dark and unstable, while the massive black ships hovered silently outside. Their enormous silhouettes blocked entire sections of the stars, covering space in endless shadow. The ship's systems still flickered constantly. Lights failed, screens distorted, warning alarms echoed through the corridors. But nobody cared anymore. Every person on the bridge was staring at the Ethel girl, waiting for answers, waiting for her to say this was all a lie. But she remained silent for several seconds. Then finally, she spoke. You never understood the war. Her words hit Elias harder than any weapon ever had. My people tried to warn you. One of the officers immediately stepped forward angrily. Warn us. You destroyed human colonies. You slaughtered millions. The girl lowered her eyes, and for the first time, Elias saw guilt in her face. Real guilt. Yes, her voice trembled softly, because some colonies were already doomed. The bridge fell silent again. Elias stared at her. What does that mean? The girl slowly raised her glowing silver eyes. The devourers leave marks across time. Certain places, certain events, certain people. She pointed toward the distorted holograms, flickering around the bridge. When we discovered that a timeline was leading toward the destruction of the galaxy, she struggled to breathe. We tried to interrupt it. Elias felt cold fear spreading through his chest. You destroyed entire planets to change the future. The girl didn't answer immediately, because she didn't need to. The answer was obvious. Yes, the realization shattered something inside the bridge. Several soldiers exchanged confused looks, because for the first time, the Eiffel attacks finally made sense. They never invaded random territories, never conquered worlds for resources, never built empires. They always attacked specific targets, specific moments, specific locations, as if they were trying to stop something invisible before it could happen. Then Elias remembered Marcus, his brother, the final transmission. They are not what we think. His chest tightened instantly. What if Marcus had discovered the truth before disappearing? What if humanity had been wrong from the very beginning? The girl continued speaking softly. In thousands of possible futures, we saw the same ending. She pointed toward the black ships outside. They always came. The lights aboard the Valkyrion flickered violently again. Outside the ship, two more human cruisers suddenly vanished into nothingness without leaving a single trace behind. Several soldiers looked away, unable to watch. The girl took another weak breath. We tried everything to stop them. We started wars. We destroyed alliances. We changed important events. She slowly closed her eyes. But no matter what we changed, her voice almost broke. They always returned. Elias slowly walked toward the massive observation window. The black ships looked even larger now, almost infinite, watching, waiting. Then Elias asked the question nobody else had the courage to ask. If the Eiffel can see the future. His voice sounded heavy now, broken. Then why did you still lose? The girl remained silent for several seconds, and when she finally answered, her voice carried pure despair. Because there is something worse than seeing the future. Slowly, she looked directly into Elias's eyes. It's seeing that in every future. Her voice trembled. You all die. The silence afterward felt devastating. Several soldiers slowly lowered their weapons. Others simply stared at the floor, unable to speak anymore. The war, the deaths, the hatred, everything humanity believed in, may have been built on a lie. While humans and Ethel destroyed each other, believing they were fighting for survival, the real enemy had been waiting beyond time itself. And now, it might already be too late to stop them. For the first time in many years, Elias Kane didn't know what to do. The war had destroyed everything he once believed in. Now, standing inside the dying command bridge of the Valkyrion, surrounded by collapsing systems and impossible truths, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Doubt. Outside the ship, the human fleet continued disappearing piece by piece. Entire cruisers vanished into nothingness beneath the shadows of the black ships. No explosions, no debris, no screams. As if reality itself was being erased. The soldiers no longer looked like warriors. They looked like survivors waiting for the end. And in the middle of that chaos was the girl, small, fragile, terrified, yet somehow carrying answers that could decide the fate of the entire universe. She remained kneeling beside the failing holographic consoles, while the glowing fractures beneath her skin pulsed more violently now. Every second seemed to weaken her further. Elias noticed immediately. She was dying, and despite that, she was still trying to help them. Slowly, Elias walked toward her. Who are you? The girl remained silent for several moments. Then finally, she answered softly, My name is Lyra. It was the first time she had spoken her name, and somehow, hearing it made everything feel more real. She was no longer simply an Ethel, no longer an enemy. She was a child trapped in the middle of the end of existence itself. Elias slowly knelt in front of her. "Why did you come to me?" Lyra lifted her glowing silver eyes toward him, and then she said something that made the blood inside his veins turn cold. "Because you are the last hope." Several soldiers exchanged confused looks immediately. Elias frowned. "That makes no sense. I'm just a commander. I can't stop something like this." Lyra slowly shook her head. "You still don't understand." Then she gently touched his arm. The moment she did, the visions returned. Fragments of countless futures exploded inside Elias's mind. Massive wars across dying galaxies. Entire planets consumed by darkness. Human fleets burning across the stars. The black ships advancing endlessly through space. And in every vision, Elias was there. Always alive. Always standing at the center of the final battle. Elias immediately pulled away in shock. "What is this?" Lyra struggled to breathe. "I can see fragments of timelines." She pointed toward him weakly. "And in every one of them you survive." Silence consumed the bridge again. Elias felt an unbearable weight crushing his chest. "That's impossible. There has to be some mistake." Lyra lowered her eyes sadly. "I wish there was." Suddenly, the Valkyrion shook violently, much stronger than before. One of the operators screamed from across the bridge. "One of the black ships is moving toward us." Every soldier immediately turned toward the main observation screens. The enormous black structure was slowly approaching the fleet. No weapons activated, no visible engines, just moving silently through space, as if escape had never been possible. And as it moved closer, reality around it began distorting. Stars disappeared. Space twisted unnaturally. Even light itself seemed unstable. Panic spread across the bridge once again. "We're defenseless. We can't escape. We're all going to die." But Lyra looked more terrified than anyone else. She suddenly grabbed Elias's arm tightly. "They know." Elias looked at her immediately. "Know what?" Tears rolled down Lyra's face. "That you're still alive." Elias felt his heart stop for a second. "What are you talking about?" Lyra trembled while speaking. "In every timeline, there's one moment where the Devourers fail." She struggled to breathe again, and somehow, her silver eyes locked onto his. "That moment always involves you." The bridge fell completely silent. Even the alarms sounded distant now. Elias tried to process her words. None of it made sense. He was just a soldier. A broken man destroyed by war. Nothing more. But then Lyra said something even worse. Something that shattered whatever hope remained. That's why they started erasing this timeline earlier than expected. Elias felt cold terror spread through his entire body. "They're trying to kill me." Lyra slowly nodded. "Before you discover how to stop them." Outside the Valkyrion, the massive black ship finally stopped directly in front of the human fleet. And in that exact moment, every system aboard the ship shut down completely. The lights died. The monitors went black. The engines fell silent. Absolute darkness consumed the Valkyrion. And for the first time, Elias Kane realized something truly terrifying. The real war had only just begun, and he was the center of it. Darkness swallowed the Valkyrion. No lights, no alarms, no engines. For the first time since the beginning of the war, silence felt more terrifying than the battle itself. Outside the ship, the massive black vessel hovered motionless before the human fleet like a god watching helpless prey. Its enormous structure blocked entire sections of the stars, drowning space in endless shadow. Inside the command bridge, nobody moved. Some soldiers trembled quietly. Others simply stared into the darkness, unable to accept what they were seeing. Because everyone aboard the Valkyrion understood the truth now. This was not an invasion. It was an execution. Elias remained standing near the observation window. The faint reflection on the dark glass revealed a man completely exhausted by war. Scars covered his face. His eyes carried years of pain. But now, there was something else inside them. Fear. Not fear of death. He had accepted death long ago. What terrified him was something far worse. The possibility that the entire galaxy was already doomed. Behind him, Lyra struggled to remain conscious. The glowing cracks beneath her skin spread slowly across her arms, like fractures of living energy. Yet despite her pain, she still looked at Elias with hope, as if she truly believed he could change the future. Then suddenly, the black ship emitted a sound. Deep, ancient, wrong. It did not sound mechanical. It sounded alive. The vibration spread through space itself and echoed directly inside the minds of everyone aboard the Valkyrian. Several soldiers collapsed instantly, screaming while holding their heads. Others began bleeding from the nose. Elias felt unbearable pressure crushing his skull. Then the visions began again. Thousands of them. Entire civilizations disappearing. Stars collapsing into darkness. Galaxies dying in silence. And at the center of every vision, the beings behind the black ships. For the first time, Elias truly saw them. The Time Devourers. They were enormous. Far too tall to be human. Their bodies looked like living shadows constantly shifting shape, as if reality itself could not fully contain them. They had no faces, only glowing white eyes floating inside endless darkness, and simply looking at them made Elias feel like his mind was breaking apart. Then a voice entered his thoughts, cold, ancient, inhuman, as if it came from something older than existence itself. You should not exist. Elias immediately fell to one knee. Pain exploded inside his mind. The voice continued, "This timeline has been condemned. Your future must be erased." Around him, soldiers collapsed unconscious one after another. Some screamed. Others simply stopped moving entirely. Lyra gathered the last of her strength and rushed toward Elias. "Don't listen to them." She grabbed his face with both hands, and the moment she touched him, everything changed. A new vision appeared inside Elias's mind, but this time it was different. He saw humans and Ethel fighting side by side, massive united fleets battling against the Devourers, worlds surviving, civilizations rebuilding. Hope. For the first time since all of this began, he saw hope. And then Elias understood something terrifying. The Devourers were not invincible. They were afraid of a single future. A future where the species of the galaxy stopped fighting each other. A future where humanity and the Ethel united together. The vision vanished instantly. Elias returned to the bridge breathing heavily, while the ancient voice echoed once more inside the ship. Resistance is useless. But now, something inside Elias had changed. For years, he fought for revenge, for hatred, for pain. But now he finally understood the truth. The war between humans and Ethel had never been the real conflict. The real war was beginning now. A war for the survival of existence itself. Slowly, Elias stood back up. The surviving soldiers looked toward him. Lyra looked toward him too. And for the first time in years, Elias Kane no longer looked broken. He looked determined. He stared directly at the massive black ship outside the Valkyrian, then finally spoke without fear. "If you want to erase our future," he clenched his fists tightly, "then we'll fight for the right to exist." Outside the ship, the stars began disappearing once again. The Black Fleet slowly advanced, and in that moment, the true war for the galaxy finally began.